It all started when my husband, Leo, suggested we do something special for our 10th wedding anniversary. For most of our marriage, we celebrated our anniversaries with a nice dinner, a weekend getaway, or sometimes just a cozy evening at home. But this time, he wanted to go all out, and to be honest, I was on board. We'd been through a lot, from juggling busy jobs to dealing with family issues, and it felt like we needed a break. That's when we decided to rent a villa in the countryside. The villa was stunning, sitting atop a small hill surrounded by lush green trees, with a view that stretched over rolling fields and forests. It had a rustic charm with its wooden beams, large stone fireplace, and cozy, intimate atmosphere. But it was also modern and spacious, with enough rooms for us and a few guests to enjoy comfortably. Leo suggested we invite both of our parents and a couple of close friends. I hesitated at first, thinking it might be too much, but he insisted. "It'll be like a mini family reunion," he said with a smile, his blue eyes sparkling with excitement. "We never get everyone together, and I think it'd be great to have them celebrate with us." I had to admit, it sounded nice. Our parents hadn't seen much of each other in the past few years, and some of our friends had been hinting they wanted to catch up. So, we sent out the invitations, and before I knew it, we were coordinating arrival times, meal plans, and activities for the weekend. The idea of it all made me a little anxious, but Leo was so enthusiastic that I couldn't help but get swept up in the excitement. The day we arrived at the villa, the place took my breath away. It was even more beautiful in person, a perfect blend of cozy and elegant, with large windows that let in soft, natural light and a balcony that wrapped around the second floor, offering a panoramic view of the valley below. There was a large kitchen, a spacious dining area, and several bedrooms scattered throughout, each with its own unique character. We had barely finished unpacking when the first guests arrived. Leo's parents, Jason and Emily, pulled up in their old SUV, waving energetically as they stepped out. Jason looked as lively as ever, despite being in his late 50s. He was the kind of guy who always had a story to tell, a joke to share, and an endless reserve of energy. Emily, on the other hand, was quieter, more reserved, and often played the role of peacemaker whenever Jason's enthusiasm went a little overboard. "Mia! Leo!" Jason boomed as he came over, pulling us both into a bear hug. "This place is incredible. You two really know how to throw a party." Emily smiled softly, nodding her agreement as she leaned in to give us more gentle, welcoming hugs. "It's lovely," she said. "Thank you for inviting us. It's been a while since we had a family gathering like this." We ushered them inside, showing them to their room, a charming space with a four-poster bed and a view of the garden. Emily immediately began unpacking, but Jason was more interested in exploring. He wandered around the villa, poking his head into every room, commenting on the decor, and making jokes about how he was going to claim the best spot for himself. "Hey, Leo, where's your wine stash?" he called out from the kitchen, making us laugh. "Don't worry, Dad, there's plenty," Leo replied, shaking his head fondly. "Just try not to drink it all before dinner." Next to arrive were my parents, George and Helen. They were a bit older and moved at a slower pace, but they were just as excited to be there. My mom immediately started fussing over everything, making sure the towels were folded just right, checking the kitchen cabinets, and offering to help with dinner prep. My dad, meanwhile, settled into a comfy armchair in the living room and began chatting with Jason, the two of them quickly getting into a friendly debate over the best way to grill a steak. By the time our friends, Kara and Mark, showed up, the villa was filled with laughter, conversation, and the clinking of glasses. Kara was my best friend from college, a lively and outspoken woman who always knew how to bring people together. Mark, her husband, was more laid back, content to sit back and let Kara take the lead in social situations. They were a perfect match. "This place is gorgeous," Kara exclaimed, spinning around in the middle of the living room. "I can't believe you guys found it." "We wanted something special," I said, smiling as I handed her a glass of wine. "And I think we managed to pull it off." The first evening was wonderful. We all gathered around the large dining table, eating, drinking, and sharing stories. Jason, as usual, was the life of the party, regaling us with tales of his latest adventures and cracking everyone up with his quick wit and infectious laughter. I could see where Leo got his sense of humor. "Did I ever tell you about the time I got lost in the woods for 3 days?" Jason began, leaning forward dramatically. 3 days? I thought it was 3 hours, Emily interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Jason waved her off. Details, details. The point is, I survived on nothing but berries and my sheer determination. You found a campsite after the first day, Emily corrected, making everyone burst into laughter. As the evening went on, I noticed Jason's enthusiasm starting to wane. He yawned a few times, his shoulders slumping as he leaned back in his chair. It wasn't surprising, he had been up since early that morning, and we'd been traveling for hours. Dad, maybe you should head to bed, Leo suggested gently. You look beat. Jason nodded, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, you're probably right. Gotta be fresh for tomorrow, right? He gave us a playful wink, then pushed himself up from the table. Good night, everyone, he said, waving as he made his way down the hall. Emily watched him go, a soft smile on her lips. I think I'll join him, she said quietly. We're not as young as we used to be, after all. Sleep well, I called after her, feeling a wave of affection for both of them. Leo's parents could be a handful, but they were kind, loving people, and I was glad they were here to celebrate with us. The rest of us stayed up for a while longer, playing board games and chatting by the fireplace. But eventually, one by one, we all began to drift off to our respective rooms, the excitement of the day giving way to exhaustion. Leo and I had chosen a room at the far end of the villa, a cozy space with large windows and a small balcony that overlooked the garden. As I changed into my pajamas and climbed into bed, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It had been a long day, but it was worth it. Everyone seemed happy, and I couldn't wait to see what the rest of the weekend would bring. Little did I know, things were about to take an unexpected turn. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and eager to start the day. I slipped out of bed quietly, not wanting to wake Leo, and headed to the kitchen to start a pot of coffee. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden glow over the villa. As I poured myself a cup and took a sip, savoring the rich, warm flavor, I thought about what to wear for the evening celebration. I had brought a special dress, a deep blue one that I knew Leo loved. I wanted everything to be perfect. I finished my coffee and headed back to our room to change, humming softly to myself. But as I pushed open the door, I froze. Jason was in our room. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoes off, flipping through the pages of a book I had left on the bedside table. For a moment, I just stood there, completely thrown off. Why was he here? Had he gotten lost? Jason? I said cautiously. He looked up, blinking in surprise. Oh, Mia. Good morning. He glanced around, as if just now realizing where he was. I thought this was my room. I let out a small laugh, relief washing over me. No, yours is down the hall. With the green door. He shook his head, chuckling softly. Guess I'm still half asleep. Sorry about that. He stood up, slipping his shoes back on. I'll get out of your way. But just as he started to head for the door, it swung open, and Leo walked in. For a split second, his face went from relaxed to utterly confused. Dad? What are you doing in here? Jason scratched his head, looking sheepish. I thought this was my room. Leo's brow furrowed, his gaze darting between the two of us. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to make sense of the situation. You thought this was your room? He repeated slowly. Yeah, I must have gotten mixed up, Jason said quickly, waving his hand dismissively. It's a big place. Easy to get turned around. Leo didn't look convinced, but before he could say anything else, Jason gave us both a quick nod and hurried out the door. As soon as he was gone, Leo turned to me, his eyes narrowed. Mia, what was that about? I shrugged, trying to seem casual. He just got confused. It's no big deal. But I could see the suspicion lingering in Leo's gaze. He opened his mouth to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Shaking his head, he sighed. Maybe he had too much to drink last night, he muttered, rubbing his temples. I'll talk to him later. I nodded, trying to push the strange encounter out of my mind. But as I got dressed and we joined the others for breakfast, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was off. Jason avoided making eye contact with me for the rest of the morning, keeping his distance as we all sat around the table, eating pancakes and chatting about the day's plans. He laughed and joked as usual, but there was a tension in his posture, a stiffness that hadn't been there before. And every so often, I'd catch him glancing at me out of the corner of his eye, his expression unreadable. Leo didn't mention the incident again, but I could tell he was still thinking about it. He was quieter than usual, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Whenever Jason made a comment or tried to join the conversation, I could see Leo watching him closely, as if trying to figure out what was really going on. It was just a misunderstanding, I told myself. Jason was probably embarrassed about getting mixed up, and that's all there was to it. But deep down, a small, nagging voice whispered that it wasn't that simple. That voice only got louder as the day went on. As the day went on, I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake off the awkwardness from that morning. I told myself to let it go, it was just a mix-up, and I was overthinking it. But every time I crossed paths with Jason, I felt a flutter of nerves. He was always friendly and cheerful, but now it seemed like he was keeping his distance. Like there was an invisible wall between us that hadn't been there before. Leo, on the other hand, was acting strange too. He wasn't outright accusing me of anything, but I could tell something was bothering him. He was quieter, watching me more closely than usual. Whenever I tried to talk to him about the weekend plans or reminisce about our past anniversaries, he'd respond with short, clipped answers, his mind clearly elsewhere. In the afternoon, we decided to go for a group hike. The villa was surrounded by beautiful trails, winding through thick forests and up gentle hills. It was the perfect way to spend a sunny day, and everyone seemed excited for a bit of adventure. Kara and Mark led the way, chatting animatedly as we set off. My parents followed, walking hand in hand like an old, comfortable couple. Leo and I trailed behind them, our silence stretching out awkwardly. "Hey," I said softly, nudging Leo's arm. "Are you okay?" He glanced at me, his eyes shadowed. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little tired, I guess." I bit my lip, wanting to press him further but not sure if it was the right time. "If something's bothering you, you can tell me." His jaw tightened. "There's nothing to tell, Mia. Let's just enjoy the hike, okay?" I nodded, swallowing my frustration. But as we continued up the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling that something between us had shifted. It was like there was a crack in the foundation of our relationship, a tiny fissure that was growing wider with each passing minute. Jason and Emily were walking a bit behind us, and I could hear Jason's booming voice echoing through the trees as he told my dad some long-winded story about his days as a firefighter. Normally, I would have found his enthusiasm endearing, but today it just made me feel uneasy. I kept catching glimpses of him out of the corner of my eye, his posture tense, his laughter a little too loud. When we reached the top of the hill, we all stopped to take in the view. The valley stretched out below us, a patchwork of green and gold under the clear blue sky. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and for a moment, I felt my worries melt away. "This is amazing," Kara breathed, shading her eyes as she looked out over the landscape. "You two really picked a perfect spot." I smiled, genuinely happy for the first time all day. "Yeah, it's pretty incredible." We took some photos, goofing around and posing dramatically on the edge of the hilltop. Jason and my dad pretended to have a who can jump the highest contest, making everyone laugh. For a little while, things felt normal again, like we were just a group of family and friends enjoying a weekend getaway. But as we started back down the trail, the uneasy tension crept back in. Leo walked a little ahead of me, his shoulders stiff, his eyes fixed on the path. Jason and Emily lagged behind, talking in low voices that I couldn't quite make out. I kept glancing back, wondering what they were saying, wondering if it had anything to do with what happened that morning. By the time we got back to the villa, I felt like I was wound up tighter than a spring. I needed to clear my head, so I told Leo the first was going to take a shower and slipped away to our room. As I stood under the hot spray, I tried to sort through my jumbled thoughts. Was I imagining things? Was this whole situation just a product of my overactive imagination, or was something really going on? And if there was something going on, what was it? My mind kept circling back to that moment when I walked in on Jason in our room. It was such a small thing, but the way he'd looked at me, there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Embarrassment? Guilt? Or was it something else entirely? I stayed in the shower longer than usual, letting the hot water wash away some of my tension. When I finally turned off the tap and wrapped myself in a towel, I felt a little more centered. I decided to wear the blue dress I'd brought, the one I'd planned for the evening. Maybe a bit of dressing up would help shake off this strange mood. As I was getting ready, I heard a knock on the door. Thinking it was Leo, I called out, "Come in." But it wasn't Leo. It was Jason. He stood in the doorway, looking unsure of himself. "Hey, Mia. Got a minute?" I hesitated, my pulse quickening. Sure. What's up?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. For a moment, he just stood there, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. I wanted to apologize. For this morning." I blinked, caught off guard. "There's no need to apologize. It was just a mix-up." He shook his head. "No, it was more than that. I should have been more careful. I didn't mean to make you or Leo uncomfortable." "Jason, really, it's fine," I insisted, though my heart was pounding. "It's not a big deal." But he didn't look convinced. I don't want things to be weird between us. You're like a daughter to me, Mia, and the last thing I want is for you to feel uncomfortable." "I'm not uncomfortable," I said quickly, even though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "We're family, right?" He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah. Family." There was a long, heavy silence. Then, before I could say anything else, the door swung open again, and this time, it was Leo. His eyes widened as he took in the scene, me, standing there in my dress, and Jason, standing a little too close. "What the hell is going on?" Leo demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Nothing," I said quickly, holding up my hands. "Jason just wanted to talk, that's all." "Talk?" Leo's gaze shifted to his father, his expression hardening. "About what?" Jason took a step back, his face flushing. "Leo, calm down. I was just apologizing to Mia for earlier." "I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" Leo snapped, his fists clenching at his sides. "You keep showing up where you're not supposed to be, Dad. What the hell is going on with you?" "Leo," I said sharply, stepping between them. "Stop it. You're overreacting." But Leo wasn't listening. He was staring at Jason like he'd never seen him before, his face a mask of hurt and anger. "Why were you in our room this morning, Dad? And why are you here now?" "I told you, it was a mistake," Jason said quietly. "I got mixed up." "Bullshit," Leo spat. "There's something you're not telling me. Both of you." My heart sank. This was spiraling out of control, and I didn't know how to stop it. "There's nothing to tell," I insisted, my voice rising in desperation. "Leo, please, just calm down. You're making this into something it's not." But he wasn't listening. He was too caught up in his own suspicions, his own anger. With a bitter laugh, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. For a long moment, Jason and I just stood there, staring at each other in stunned silence. "I'm sorry," he whispered finally, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean to make things worse." "It's not your fault," I said softly, though I wasn't sure if I really believed that. He's upset. He'll cool off." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Leo wasn't the type to let things go easily, and I could see the hurt and betrayal in his eyes. He thought we were hiding something from him, and no amount of reassurance was going to change that. As Jason left the room, closing the door quietly behind him, I sank down onto the bed, my heart heavy. This was supposed to be a celebration, a time for us to reconnect and make new memories. But now it felt like everything was falling apart. And I didn't know how to put it back together. The rest of the day was a blur. After Leo stormed out, I sat in our room for a while, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I wanted to chase after him, to explain that he was jumping to conclusions, but I knew it wouldn't do any good right now. Leo needed space to cool down, and anything I said in the heat of the moment would only make things worse. So, I decided to focus on the evening. After all, this was supposed to be a celebration, and I refused to let it be ruined by misunderstandings and hurt feelings. I took a deep breath, straightened my dress, and made my way to the kitchen, where Emily and Kara were prepping dinner. "Hey, need any help?" I asked, plastering on a smile. Kara looked up, her face lighting up with a grin. "Just in time. We were about to start on the appetizers. Are you okay? You look a little tense." I forced a laugh, waving off her concern. "Oh, I'm fine. Just had a small disagreement with Leo, but it's nothing." Emily's gaze sharpened slightly, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she handed me a tray of sliced vegetables and cheese. "If you want to arrange this, that would be great." I busied myself with the tray, focusing on lining up the colorful slices in neat rows. The rhythmic task was calming, and for a little while, I managed to push everything else to the back of my mind. But every time I glanced at the doorway, I found myself hoping to see Leo's familiar silhouette, hoping he would come in and wrap his arms around me, tell me he was sorry for overreacting, that everything would be okay. But he didn't. Instead, as the evening wore on, everyone else filtered into the kitchen, chatting and laughing like nothing was wrong. My parents, Kara and Mark, Jason and Emily, they all seemed so relaxed, so at ease. Even Jason seemed to have shaken off the tension from earlier. He joined in on the conversation, making jokes and keeping everyone entertained, his usual charm fully intact. It was almost enough to make me forget about the strained encounter in our room. Almost. "Where's Leo?" my mom asked at one point, looking around curiously. "Probably out for a walk," I said lightly, though the words felt hollow. "You know how he likes to clear his head." She nodded, accepting my explanation without question, and the conversation moved on. But I couldn't stop worrying. What if Leo didn't come back? What if he decided he couldn't handle whatever it was he thought was happening? I was on the verge of sneaking out to look for him when I heard the front door creak open. Leo stepped inside, his hair slightly mussed from the wind, his face flushed. For a moment, our eyes met across the room, and I held my breath, waiting for some sign, an apology, an explanation, anything. But he just looked away. "Hey, everyone," he said quietly, slipping past the group to grab a beer from the fridge. "Sorry I'm late." "Everything okay?" Mark asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, Leo muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Just needed some air." I could feel Kara watching me, her eyes sharp and curious. But I avoided her gaze, pretending to be absorbed in arranging the last few slices of cheese on the tray. I couldn't deal with her questions right now. "Let's get the party started," Jason said suddenly, breaking the awkward silence. He clapped his hands together, his grin wide and infectious. "Who's up for a toast?" There was a chorus of agreement, and soon everyone had a drink in hand. I found myself sandwiched between Kara and my dad, with Leo standing a few feet away. He still wouldn't look at me. "To Mia and Leo," Jason announced, raising his glass high. 10 years of love, laughter, and everything in between. "Here's to many more." Here, the others echoed, clinking their glasses together. I forced a smile, lifting my own glass. But as I sipped the champagne, it felt like I was swallowing glass shards. This was supposed to be our celebration, but I'd never felt more distant from Leo. He was right there, so close I could reach out and touch him, and yet he felt a million miles away. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and strained small talk. I tried to act like everything was fine, laughing at Jason's jokes and nodding along to my mom's stories. But inside, I was a tangled mess of nerves. Leo barely said a word to me, his eyes constantly flicking between me and Jason. Every time Jason made a comment or laughed a little too loudly, I could see Leo's jaw tighten, his fists clenching at his sides. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around an invisible landmine. One wrong move, one careless word, and everything would explode. By the time dessert was served, I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself from the table, mumbling something about needing to get some fresh air, and slipped out onto the balcony. The night air was cool and crisp, the stars twinkling overhead. I wrapped my arms around myself, staring out at the darkened landscape. I heard the door creak open behind me, and my heart leapt. I turned, half expecting to see Leo. But it was Jason. "Hey," he said softly, stepping out onto the balcony. "Mind if I join you?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." He leaned against the railing beside me, his face shadowed in the dim light. For a moment, we just stood there in silence, the night sounds of crickets and rustling leaves filling the space between us. "Leo's really upset," he said finally, his voice low. I sighed, rubbing my arms. "I know. I don't understand why. It was a mistake. Why can't he see that?" Jason didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was gentle, almost hesitant. "He's always been a little overprotective. Especially when it comes to you. He's just worried, that's all." "Worried about what?" I demanded, frustration bubbling up inside me. "There's nothing going on." "I know that," Jason said quickly. "And deep down, I think Leo knows it too. But sometimes our minds play tricks on us. Make us see things that aren't really there." I stared at him, searching his face for some clue as to what he really meant. But his expression was unreadable, his eyes fixed on some distant point in the darkness. "I don't want to lose him," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You won't," Jason said firmly. "Leo loves you more than anything. He just needs some time to work through this." I nodded slowly, but his words didn't do much to ease the tight knot in my chest. What if time wasn't enough? What if this suspicion, this doubt, festered and grew until it destroyed everything we built? "Jason," I began, then hesitated. Did I do something to make him feel this way?" He looked at me sharply. "No. This isn't your fault, Mia. Don't ever think that." "But..." "It's not," he insisted, his voice firm. "You've been nothing but loyal and loving. Leo just needs to see that." For a moment, I wanted to believe him. But as I glanced back at the villa, at the warm glow of the windows and the sound of laughter drifting through the open doors, all I could see was Leo's strained face, his hurt eyes. Jason reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Give him some time. He'll come around." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah. You're right." But as I stood there, staring out into the night, I couldn't help but wonder if this was just the beginning of the end. The next morning, the tension between Leo and me was palpable. We tried to keep up appearances in front of our parents and friends, but I could see the strain in his smile, feel the distance in the way he moved around me. Every touch felt hesitant, every word guarded. After breakfast, I pulled him aside, determined to clear the air. "Leo, we need to talk," I said softly, leading him out to the back patio. He followed reluctantly, his arms crossed over his chest. When we were alone, he turned to face me, his expression closed off. "What is it, Mia?" he asked flatly. "Please, just tell me what's going on," I pleaded. "You've been acting so strange since yesterday. I need to know what you're thinking." For a long moment, he just stared at me, his gaze piercing. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to think anymore, Mia. I don't know." "About what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "About you. About Dad. About us," he burst out, his eyes blazing. "I walked in on something yesterday. And I don't know what it was, but it didn't feel right. I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. Leo, I swear, nothing happened. Your dad just got confused. He came to apologize, and then you." "Nothing happened?" Leo echoed incredulously. You expect me to believe that? I found him in our room, Mia. In our space. How am I supposed to just ignore that? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I understand why you're upset. I really do. But you're not seeing the full picture here. It was a mistake, a simple misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Leo scoffed, shaking his head. What kind of misunderstanding involves my dad in our bedroom, alone with you? That's not just a little slip-up. I know it sounds bad, but you have to trust me. I insisted, my voice rising slightly. You know me better than that. I would never betray you. You know how much I love you. Leo looked away, his jaw tense. Love isn't just a word, Mia. It's about trust, and right now, I don't feel like I can trust you. Not when I keep replaying that moment in my head. I can't help but think there's something more going on. His words struck me like a slap. You think I would cheat on you with your father? I asked, incredulous. After 10 years together, you really think that of me? I don't know what to think. Leo shot back, frustration boiling over. Everything feels so messed up right now. It's like I don't even know who to believe. Then believe me. I pleaded, stepping closer to him. I am your wife. I've always been honest with you. You know I would never do anything to hurt you or our marriage. He hesitated, his resolve wavering for a brief moment. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the part of him that wanted to trust me and the part that felt betrayed and confused. He started, running a hand over his face. It feels like everything is spiraling out of control. One minute we're celebrating our love, and the next, it feels like we're on the brink of disaster. It's not a disaster, Leo, I said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. We can fix this. We just need to talk and be honest with each other. He looked down at my hand, then back up at me, his expression softening slightly. I want to believe that, Mia. But I can't help but feel like something is broken between us now. Then let's fix it together, I urged, my heart racing with hope. We can talk through this. I'll answer any questions you have, and we can get through this. I don't even know where to start, he admitted, his voice dropping to a whisper. I feel so lost. Then start with what you're feeling, I encouraged. What's bothering you the most right now? He took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging. I guess I'm scared. Scared that this could ruin everything we've built together. Scared that I'm not enough for you, and that you could find someone else. My heart broke at his words. Leo, you are more than enough for me. You're my everything. I chose you, and I will always choose you. Please, don't let this misunderstanding tear us apart. He looked into my eyes, searching for sincerity, and I could feel the emotional wall between us starting to crack. It just hurts to think that you might not feel the same way, he murmured. That maybe there's something more between you and Jason. There's nothing more, Leo. I said, my voice urgent. You have to believe me. The only person I want is you. I love you. It's always been you. For a long moment, he studied my face, weighing my words. Finally, he sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing just a bit. Okay. I'm going to try to believe you. Relief flooded through me, but I knew this wouldn't be an easy fix. Thank you. That's all I ask. Leo stepped closer, hesitantly wrapping his arms around me. I melted into his embrace, grateful for the warmth and comfort he offered. But I could still feel the lingering uncertainty in his body, the slight tension that told me this was far from over. Can we talk about this later? He asked, pulling back slightly to look into my eyes. I need some time to process everything. Of course, I said gently, nodding. Just know that I'm here whenever you're ready. We stood there for a moment, lost in each other's eyes, before finally pulling away. I watched as he walked back toward the villa, his posture a little less tense than before. Maybe we were on the right track after all. As the day progressed, we managed to keep up appearances for the sake of our guests. Everyone enjoyed a leisurely breakfast, and soon after, we set out for a day of activities. The sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with laughter and chatter as we played games in the backyard and lounged by the pool. But no matter how much I tried to focus on the festivities, my mind kept drifting back to the unresolved tension with Leo. I could see the worry in his eyes, the flickers of doubt that clouded his smile. We exchanged glances, each one charged with unspoken words, and I felt the weight of our conversation pressing down on us both. In the afternoon, we decided to split into teams for a friendly game of capture the flag. Jason and Leo teamed up with my dad against the rest of us. As we ran around the yard, dodging and laughing, I felt a momentary escape from the heavy feelings between us. The laughter, the thrill of competition, and the simple joy of being with our loved ones helped ease my mind. But as the game came to a close, the tension returned, heavier than before. We all collapsed on the grass, panting and laughing, but I could see Leo glancing at Jason again, that spark of suspicion igniting in his eyes. Later that evening, as we gathered for dinner, I felt a sense of dread settle over me. Leo sat across from me, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking back and forth between me and his father. The conversation flowed around the table, but I could feel the weight of unspoken words lingering in the air. At one point, Jason made a joke about his youthful escapades, and everyone laughed, but I could see Leo stiffen. His laughter was strained, and he forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Remember when you took Mia and me fishing at the lake?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. "We had such a great time that day." "Yeah, that was a blast," Jason replied, grinning. "I remember you two caught a bunch of fish, and then threw them all back in because you didn't want to eat them." The table erupted in laughter, but I could see Leo's smile falter. He looked down at his plate, his shoulders tense. I reached across the table, my fingers brushing against his hand, but he pulled away slightly. "Are you okay?" I asked, my heart sinking. "I'm fine," he said curtly, but I could hear the edge in his voice. As dinner progressed, I felt the frustration rising within me. Why couldn't Leo just let this go? Why was he letting his doubts consume him like this? I could feel my patience wearing thin, the need to confront him rising with every passing minute. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room for dessert, but I knew I needed to talk to Leo again. I found him standing by the window, staring out at the night sky. I took a deep breath and approached him, determined to break through the barrier between us. "Leo," I said softly, reaching for his arm. "Can we talk?" He turned to me, his expression guarded. "Can it wait until later?" "I just need some time." "No, it can't wait," I insisted, my heart racing. "I'm tired of dancing around this. We need to have this conversation now." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What's there to talk about? I've made my feelings pretty clear." "Your feelings are based on assumptions and doubts," I exclaimed, feeling my frustration boiling over. "You can't just dismiss everything we've built because of one mistake." He turned to face me fully, his eyes flashing with emotion. "And you can't expect me to just ignore what I saw, Mia. It's not that simple." "I'm not asking you to ignore it. I'm asking you to talk to me. To listen to me," I pleaded. "You keep shutting me out, and it's driving me crazy." "Maybe I need time to figure things out," he snapped back. "I can't just turn off my feelings because you want me to." "No, you're right," I said, lowering my voice. "But you also can't keep punishing me for something I didn't do." There was a heavy silence between us, the tension crackling in the air. I could see the turmoil on his face, the conflict between his love for me and his need to protect himself from potential betrayal. "Leo, please," I said, my voice breaking. "I need you to trust me. I need you to let me in." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression softening. "I don't want to lose you, Mia. I really don't." "You won't," I promised, stepping closer to him. "But we have to be honest with each other. We have to communicate, even when it's hard." He nodded slowly, his gaze searching mine. "Okay. I'll try. I'm scared." I'm scared too, I admitted, feeling the weight of vulnerability settle over us. But I believe in us. I believe we can get through this together. After a few moments, he finally reached for my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. Together, he echoed softly. With a renewed sense of determination, we returned to the living room, where the atmosphere was filled with laughter and conversation. Our friends and family were enjoying dessert, and the warmth of the room wrapped around us like a comforting blanket. As we joined the group, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe we could make it through this. Maybe the love Leo and I had shared for the past 10 years was strong enough to weather this storm. Throughout the evening, I kept glancing at Leo, noticing how he relaxed a little more with each passing hour. He laughed at jokes, joined in conversations, and even stole a few kisses from me when he thought no one was watching. But I could also see the occasional flicker of doubt in his eyes, a shadow lurking just beneath the surface. As the night wore on, Jason excused himself to grab some more drinks from the kitchen. Leo's eyes followed him, his expression darkening slightly. I knew this was a delicate moment, and I needed to tread carefully. "Hey," I said softly, leaning in closer to him. "You're okay, right? You're not still feeling uneasy?" He glanced at me, his gaze hesitant. "I'm trying, Mia. It's just hard." "I understand," I replied gently. "But let's not let this ruin the night. Everyone is here to celebrate us, and I want you to enjoy it." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know. I just wish I could shake this feeling." "Maybe you just need to focus on something else," I suggested. "Why don't we play a game? It could lighten the mood." He considered it for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. What do you have in mind?" "Let's do charades." "It's always a hit," I grinned, excitement bubbling up inside me. "All right, I'm in," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting in a small smile. As I rallied everyone together, I could feel the energy in the room shift. We cleared some space in the living room and divided into teams. Laughter filled the air as we acted out ridiculous scenarios, mimicking animals, movies, and famous personalities. Leo seemed to relax more with every passing minute, his laughter ringing out as he let go of some of his worries. At one point, he got so caught up in his performance that he accidentally knocked over a vase, sending it crashing to the ground. Everyone gasped, and for a moment, there was silence. But then, Leo burst out laughing, and soon the rest of us joined in. The tension broke like glass, and we all felt lighter. As the game continued, I watched Leo interact with our friends and family. He was charming and funny, the spark of joy returning to his eyes. But every time Jason joined in, I noticed Leo's mood would dip just a little. It was clear that the earlier confrontation was still lingering in his mind, but I hoped that with time, he would learn to let it go. Later that evening, after the games had concluded and everyone began to wind down, I found Leo standing by the balcony again, staring out at the stars. I joined him, leaning against the railing beside him. "Thinking?" I asked softly. He nodded, his eyes still fixed on the night sky. "Just thinking about how lucky we are. Even with all the chaos." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Yeah. I wouldn't trade this for anything." He turned to me, his expression serious. "I know things are still complicated between us, but I want you to know I'm committed to working through this. You mean everything to me, Mia." Tears stung my eyes at his words. "And you mean everything to me, Leo. I promise I'll always be honest with you. I'll never let anything come between us again." "I'm sorry for how I reacted," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I let my fears get the best of me." "It's okay," I reassured him. "It's a hard situation for both of us. But I'm glad we talked about it. I think it made us stronger." He took a deep breath, nodding. "Yeah. I think so too." As we stood there in silence, I felt the warmth of his presence beside me. The stars twinkled above, and for the first time that evening, I felt a sense of peace settle over us. Maybe we would be okay after all. Just then, we heard Jason's voice from inside the villa. "Hey, you two lovebirds. Come join us for a nightcap." Leo looked at me, his expression amused. I guess we should go back in. Yeah, I replied, taking his hand. Let's go. As we walked back inside, I could feel the warmth of our connection growing stronger. The doubts that had once loomed over us were still there, but they felt less suffocating now. I knew that our love could withstand anything, as long as we were honest with each other. After another hour of laughter and drinks, the night began to wind down. Our friends and family started to drift off to their rooms, the celebrations gradually fading. As the last of our guests left, I turned to Leo, my heart racing. Hey, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you want to talk some more? Just us? He smiled, the warmth in his eyes returning. Yeah, I'd like that. We headed back out to the patio, the cool night air wrapping around us. I leaned against him as we talked, our conversation flowing freely. We discussed our hopes for the future, our dreams, and even the moments we cherished from our 10 years together. The earlier tension faded with every word, and I felt the love between us grow stronger. At one point, Leo turned to me, a serious look in his eyes. I don't want to lose you, Mia. I really don't. You won't, I promised, reaching up to cup his face in my hands. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. He leaned in, pressing his forehead against mine. I love you. I love you too, Leo. Always. And with that, we shared a kiss, sealing our commitment to each other, a promise that no misunderstanding would ever come between us again. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds chirping outside our window. The sunlight poured into the room, bathing everything in a warm glow. I stretched, feeling a sense of hope and clarity that I hadn't felt in days. I turned to Leo, who was still asleep beside me, a peaceful look on his face. My heart swelled at the sight. Last night had felt like a turning point for us, and I was determined to make sure we stayed on the right path. After a quick shower and a change of clothes, I decided to let Leo sleep in a little longer while I prepared breakfast. I tiptoed into the kitchen, trying to be as quiet as possible. As I began to set up the coffee maker and gather ingredients, I could hear the faint sounds of laughter coming from outside. Curious, I stepped out onto the patio and was greeted by the sight of Jason, my parents, and our friends enjoying a leisurely breakfast in the sun. They were chatting and laughing, the atmosphere light and cheerful. Good morning, sleepyhead, my mom called out, waving me over. Morning! I replied, joining them at the table. Where's Leo? Jason asked, looking around. Isn't he up yet? He's still sleeping, I said with a smile. I thought I'd let him catch a few extras, yes. That's sweet of you, my mom said. You two had quite the late night, didn't you? I felt my cheeks warm slightly but managed to smile. Yeah, we had a lot to talk about. Everything okay? Kara asked, concern flickering in her eyes. I nodded, feeling a rush of gratitude for my friend's support. Yeah, we're working through things. Just some misunderstandings. Good to hear, Mark chimed in, his voice warm. You two are meant for each other. As I sat down to join the group, I felt a sense of warmth and belonging wash over me. This was my family, my chosen family, and they were all here to celebrate us. I wanted to make sure that this weekend would be filled with love, laughter, and cherished memories. After breakfast, I decided to bring Leo a cup of coffee and some toast. I made my way back to our room, feeling a sense of anticipation in my chest. As I opened the door, I found him sitting up in bed, rubbing his eyes and looking adorably sleepy. Good morning, sunshine, I said, a smile spreading across my face as I handed him the coffee. Morning, he replied, taking the mug from me. What time is it? Late enough that I figured you might want some breakfast in bed, I said playfully. I thought you could use a little pampering. He chuckled, taking a sip of his coffee. You know me too well. I slid onto the bed beside him, enjoying the warmth of his body next to mine. I'm glad you're up. Everyone's having breakfast outside, and they were wondering where you were. Did they say anything about last night? He asked, a hint of worry creeping back into his voice. I shook my head, wanting to reassure him. No, not really. Just that they were happy to see us together. Everyone loves you, Leo. You know that, right? He smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. Yeah, I do. It's just hard to shake this feeling. I understand, I said softly. But we can work through this together. Remember, I'm always here for you. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Thanks, Mia. I really appreciate that. After breakfast, we decided to spend the day relaxing by the pool with our friends and family. The sun shone brightly, and the laughter and chatter filled the air. It felt good to be surrounded by love and support. As the day went on, I noticed Leo becoming more at ease. He laughed, joked, and even joined in on a few silly pool games. I could see the love and joy returning to his eyes, and my heart soared at the sight. At one point, while we were lounging by the pool, Jason approached us, a mischievous grin on his face. Hey, Leo, how about a little friendly competition? I challenge you to a swim race. Bring it on, Leo replied with a playful smirk, standing up and stretching. The two of them jumped into the pool, splashing water everywhere as they raced to the other end. I cheered them on from the sidelines, feeling a sense of pride in watching Leo embrace the moment. The earlier tension felt like a distant memory, and I was grateful for this time together. As the day turned into evening, we all gathered around a bonfire on the beach. The sky turned shades of orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over us. We roasted marshmallows and shared stories, the atmosphere filled with laughter and warmth. I looked over at Leo, who was sitting beside me, his arm around my shoulders. He leaned down to kiss my forehead, and I could feel the love radiating between us. As the night went on, Jason began to tell a funny story about his most embarrassing moments, and everyone erupted in laughter. Leo joined in, his laughter genuine and free. For the first time in days, I felt completely at ease. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that the conversation between Leo and Jason was still lurking in the background. I could see Jason's expression occasionally shift when he glanced at me, a hint of tension simmering beneath the surface. I hoped that whatever unresolved issues lingered would be addressed soon. After everyone had their fill of s'mores, Leo stood up, raising his glass to get everyone's attention. Hey, everyone! I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for being here to celebrate with us. This weekend means a lot to us, and we're so grateful for your love and support. Everyone raised their glasses in a toast, their smiles genuine and warm. To Leo and Mia, they all cheered. To love and friendship, I added, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. As we clinked glasses and took a sip, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the bonds we had built over the years. This was our family, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. As the night went on, I could see the camaraderie among our friends and family strengthen, and I felt hopeful that Leo and Jason would eventually find a way to mend their relationship as well. I could see the love between them, it was just buried beneath layers of confusion and misunderstanding. As the bonfire flickered and the stars twinkled overhead, I leaned my head on Leo's shoulder, feeling content and happy. This was our life, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The next few days flew by in a whirlwind of activity. We spent our time enjoying the beach, playing games, and sharing stories with friends and family. Each day seemed to bring new adventures, and the love between Leo and me felt stronger than ever. But I could still sense the undercurrents of tension, particularly between Leo and Jason. There were moments of awkward silence when Jason would enter the room, and I could see the flicker of discomfort in Leo's eyes. I knew we needed to address it before it festered into something more significant. On the last evening of our gathering, I decided to confront the issue head-on. After dinner, I suggested that we all sit down together around the bonfire. Everyone settled into their chairs, laughter filling the air as we reminisced about the past few days. As the conversation flowed, I glanced over at Leo, who was sitting beside me, a thoughtful expression on his face. Leo, I said, breaking into the conversation. Can I ask you something? He looked at me, his brow furrowing slightly. Sure, what's up? I think it might be time for you and Jason to have a conversation, I said gently. I can see that there's still some tension between you two, and it would be good to clear the air before we leave. Jason looked at Leo, his expression cautious. Yeah, I'd like that too. I don't want any bad feelings between us. Leo sighed, running a hand through his hair. I guess it's time to talk about it, isn't it? Yeah, I encouraged. It's better to address it now than let it linger. With that, Leo and Jason exchanged a look, and I could see the wheels turning in their minds. I hoped that they could find a way to communicate openly and honestly. Okay, Leo said finally, his voice steady. Let's talk. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, Leo and Jason began to share their feelings. It was a delicate conversation, with moments of tension and vulnerability. Leo expressed his worries about trust and how he felt about seeing Jason in our room. Jason, in turn, shared his perspective, emphasizing that he never intended to create any misunderstandings between us. As the discussion continued, I felt a sense of hope blossoming in my chest. They both spoke honestly, and even though there were moments of discomfort, it felt like a weight was lifting off their shoulders. They addressed the fears and doubts that had been lingering, and I could see the bond between them starting to mend. Eventually, Leo took a deep breath and spoke again. I don't want this to come between us, Jason. You're my brother, and I love you. I just need to know that I can trust you. I love you too, Leo, Jason replied, sincerity in his voice. I never meant to put you in that position. I was just trying to look out for both of you. As they continued to talk, I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. This was a breakthrough, a moment of healing that had been long overdue. The love between them was evident, and it was heartwarming to see them work through their issues. Finally, after what felt like hours of discussion, they reached an understanding. They embraced, their brotherly bond stronger than ever. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, knowing that we could finally put the past behind us. As the bonfire continued to crackle and the night wore on, we all celebrated the newfound harmony between us. We shared laughter and stories late into the night, the atmosphere filled with warmth and love. The earlier tensions that had hung over us felt like a distant memory, and I felt lighter than I had in days. But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, I could see that Jason was becoming increasingly quiet. He seemed lost in thought, staring into the flames with an intensity that caught my attention. Jason, are you okay? I asked, concern creeping into my voice. He looked up, surprised, and forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking. About what? Leo asked, his brow furrowing. You can talk to us, you know. I know, Jason replied, running a hand through his hair. It's just. I'm really happy for you both. I just wish I could find something like that for myself. Leo and I exchanged a glance, sensing the weight of his words. What do you mean? I asked gently. I don't know, he said, his voice tinged with vulnerability. I see you two together, and it makes me realize how much I want that kind of connection in my life. It's like everyone else around me is moving forward, and I feel stuck. Have you thought about dating again? Leo asked, his tone encouraging. Yeah, but I just haven't found the right person, Jason admitted, his gaze dropping to the ground. It's hard, you know? I keep comparing every potential relationship to what you two have, and it's just overwhelming. Don't put that pressure on yourself, I said softly. Everyone's journey is different. You'll find someone who appreciates you for who you are. Yeah, and in the meantime, we're here for you, Leo added, placing a hand on Jason's shoulder. You don't have to go through this alone. Jason nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. As the night wound down, I felt a sense of contentment settle over me. We had faced challenges together, but we had also come out stronger. The love and support we shared were unbreakable, and I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would tackle it as a team. As the sun rose on the last day of our getaway, I woke up feeling renewed and hopeful. The past few days had been filled with laughter, tears, and meaningful conversations. Leo and I had grown closer, and Jason's vulnerability had brought a new depth to our friendship. After breakfast, we all gathered for one last group activity, a beach volleyball tournament. The competitive spirit was high, and we spent hours laughing, running, and enjoying the sun. The sound of waves crashing against the shore was the perfect backdrop for a fun-filled day. As the tournament wrapped up, I looked over at Leo, who was standing by the water's edge, his gaze distant as he watched the horizon. I felt a pull in my chest, knowing that this moment marked a significant turning point for us. I approached him, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. "What's on your mind?" I asked gently. He turned to me, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "I just can't believe how far we've come. I feel like we've finally broken through those barriers that were holding us back." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I feel it too. We've grown so much together." Leo took a deep breath, his expression serious. "Mia, I know we've had our ups and downs, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work. You're my everything." Tears pricked at my eyes as I nodded. "You're my everything too, Leo. I'm so grateful for you." He leaned in, capturing my lips in a soft kiss. As we pulled away, I felt a renewed sense of hope for our future. Later that afternoon, we all gathered one last time for a group photo. We stood together, arms wrapped around each other, smiling widely at the camera. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the memories we had created during this trip. After the photo session, I pulled Jason aside, wanting to check in with him one last time before we left. "Hey, are you okay? You've seemed a bit quiet today." "Yeah, I'm good," he replied, a hint of a smile on his face. "Just reflecting on everything that's happened. It's been a lot to process." "I understand," I said gently. "But I hope you know we're here for you, no matter what." "Thanks, Mia." "I really appreciate that," he said, his gaze sincere. "I'm glad we talked. It feels like a weight has been lifted." "Good," I smiled, feeling relieved. "And if you ever need someone to talk to, you know where to find me." "Same goes for you," he replied, his expression warm. "You and Leo are the best." As we wrapped up our final moments together, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. We had come through the other side of misunderstandings and tensions, and now we were ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As we drove home, Leo reached for my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I'm so proud of us, Mia. We faced everything together." "Yeah, we did," I replied, my heart swelling with love. "And I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." With a sense of optimism and love, I leaned my head against his shoulder, knowing that we were stronger than ever and ready to face whatever challenges awaited us next.